you got the second word there, the people part. So I lead data strategy at Splunk, and basically what that means is really helping the business leverage data for tactical, operational, and strategic decisions. So I'm not the first one here to mention, well, data has gone mainstream, and it's crucial to making critical business decisions, right? So what Krish mentioned earlier was, you got to highlight 3 points. But I'm going to take that to the next step and say you've had at least 3 people already reinforce some of these points, right? So it must be important. We've seen many successes in the data-driven worldview. The Googles, Facebooks out there have entire businesses built on top of the power of data, right? But that ripple effect has penetrated other industry verticals as well, ranging from healthcare, pharmaceuticals, telecom, energy utilities, you name it, right? So it's not just high tech anymore, but you kind of see, the power unlocked by the high tech industry for data being leveraged by other folks as well, right? So Splunk is very much at the forefront of some of this transformation. Splunk is a company that helps our customers unlock their potential unlock the potential of machine-generated data and extract operational intelligence from all the data within their organization. Now that puts us in a nice spot for understanding some of these patterns that we see. There are definitely a lot of pitfalls of common mistakes that people make with data, but at the same time we also see common building blocks and lessons that drive the success of leveraging data. So this is an appropriate quote, and with great power comes great responsibility. It's my gift, my curse. So I think data can be both a blessing and a burden simultaneously, and it's on all of us as data practitioners, both current data practitioners and future data practitioners, to really play that balancing act. So let's start with some of the realities and common example missteps that I've seen at Splunk and at some of our customers. So there's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. So let's look at some data here. So we had deployed a feature in our product. Of course, those features evolve over time. We had come up with a metric to measure engagement for that particular feature. And suddenly we have this panic. Okay, what's happening, right? Are we losing customers all of a sudden? What are we doing wrong? Did we do something that really pissed someone off? And then there's this, domino effect, right? So we dug deeper, tried to figure out why rather than just the what, and figured out that in the latest release, there was a change in the software. A field got renamed, and that field was used to contribute to the engagement metric. And it wasn't a red alert so much as, okay, we just need to adapt how we compute that metric and update the chart accordingly, right? So I would rephrase that quote as a foolish consistency is the norm with big data, right? Change is the only thing that's constant, and you have to accept it and prepare for it. Second example here, to each his own. We hear it all the time. So at Splunk, we were looking at a measure for figuring out unique downloaders. And we were trying to get alignment from different organizations within the business. And 2 different people showed us 2 different charts. I believe one from products, one from marketing. And if you look, they both had unique downloaders, but the numbers didn't quite line up, right? It turns out there were 2 issues. Each of these people were using slightly different variants on the filters of what they were counting as a download, and also a different measure for uniqueness, right? Something as simple as count versus distinct count can account for that difference, right? So I say to each her own metric, and really the lesson here is put yourself in their shoes and try to empathize with what they're trying to demonstrate and why they're using the metric they're using. Third example here, we were trying to figure out what versions, what operating systems to deprecate support for in our product, right? So a very simple graph here, count by OS, except why are there so many nulls? There's no such thing as a null OS, right? And then you think about it and you figure out, okay, well, the way this data was collected, the interface allowed people to just default to nothing, right? Don't answer the question, and that produced null results. Of course, that basically means, in the space of big data, there are no stupid answers, only stupid questions. So really think about, how to add those checks for getting at the answer that you need to make the decisions that you're trying to address. So the other side of this, those were just examples of data missteps or misguided alarms. Corporate reality. There is a wide range of awareness and literacy when it comes to data. So I spent almost a decade at Berkeley, and we do honestly live in a bubble because we're at the bleeding edge of data-driven thinking, right? But corporate reality is that you have people that are like, data, what? We collect that? Where? Why? Right? Is it worth it? Then you have the folks, very common in salespeople who very much rely on their gut, right? I know how to push this deal. I strongly believe this is what needs to be done, right? So their gut trumps any data. I'm not saying the gut instinct isn't important. It's definitely crucial, but you have to be open-minded and take all sources of input that can guide to a better outcome, right? Of course, the dangerous ones are the delusional ones who say, oh, yeah, this is totally data-driven, but they have major gaping holes or blind spots there that they're not willing to consider or acknowledge, right? Then you get into people that are over the hump. Okay, data is good. Let me start trying to use it. The novice users need a little bit of guidance and coaching around how to do the right thing with data. And then that has to be led by the ones that are seasoned veterans who have the statistical background, analytic rigor, and business hat, if you will, to really steer the conversation and be good role models, right? So the other aspect of this data ecosystem, so at Splunk, as well as at many of our customers, there's no one-size-fits-all data tool or platform or solution that addresses everyone's needs. There are a variety of systems, variety of ways people generate data, either custom instrumentation in their product, or you have, CRM systems, HR systems, where, for each purpose that it's stood up for, that is the best tool to use. But then, where it gets complicated is you need to establish all the plumbing to connect all the pieces and enable other people. And then we have different versions of the plumbing, different users interacting at each of these points, not necessarily able to empathize with each other or understand, well, I think, this is the best model to do it. I have no idea why they would set up the schema that way, right? So the myopic view of setting up each of these stages of the data lifecycle eventually becomes a barrier when you try to leverage data at the corporate level. So what we see, many tools for each stage. Everyone wants and needs data, but no one necessarily knows where to find it, what the single source of truth is, or even, have the knowledge to write the queries or use the tools that have been stood up, right? So what this creates is brawls and breadlines. That's a quote straight out of Winning with Data. That's an excellent book that I would strongly encourage all of you to read. Data brawls, well, this is how I want it. This is how the schema should be. This is the right way to do it. Lots of arguments over that. Breadlines, when people are waiting for, oh no, I own this data. I lock it up this way, right? This is what I'm using it for. I don't see why you need it. Wait your turn, or give me more resources so I can give you what you want, right? So that's the reality. So our lessons over the years have been that there are three, the golden trifecta, right? There are three things that you really need to iterate on and debug and get convergence on to unlock the potential of data, right? So I'm going to share some of the lessons and best practices that we've learned over the years for leveraging and navigating people, process, and technology. So first, people. This is a message that has been reinforced by Krish and others earlier today. Know your audience, right? Build that empathy to put yourself in their shoes and try to understand, first of all, what is the problem they're trying to solve. When I'm talking to a marketing person, the thing that drives them is, well, how can I show a higher number of conversions, lead to conversion into, the sales pipeline, right? When I'm talking to a salesperson, they're trying to figure out what are the repeatable sales motions and playbooks and plays that I could try to learn from past deals and push forward, right? To a products person, it's who's using my product, how, right? What is the uptake? What is the engagement? So understand what is their pain point that they're trying to solve for. And then that's the top-down view. The bottom-up is what data do I have available right now to help them with their decision, right? And then somehow you have to make the ends meet. And that's where you scope the problem and keep it simple, right? Sometimes people just need a count of interesting things by interesting features, right? And then some simple statistics. Do averages, median, guide them along. Okay, let's just, figure out the shape of the data, understand first principles about what it is that we're trying to count here and model. And then bridge the gap between, like, okay, the data that I have doesn't really help answer the question, so maybe I need to rephrase the question and improve the data quality and granularity at the same time, right? So in that process, communication is key. Understand, again, what is the easiest way to communicate results to the person making the decision, right? Maybe they're not going to log into your particular tool and look at the dashboards. Maybe all they want is a graph or a regular email with the latest results, and work with them, talk to them, right? Second thing here is don't be a mushroom. This is a quote that one of my friends told me. Basically, don't be kept in the dark and don't be fed manure, right? Ask the right questions to prevent garbage in, first of all, right? Machine learning, advanced analytics, all of that is great, but it all relies on having good, reliable, usable data, right? Do the due diligence and ask the right questions about data quality, coverage, the systems generating the data, any biases that may be a side effect of the user interfaces for the data generating system, right? Really dig deeper. The other side of that is prevent garbage out, right? If you're controlling the analysis and how it's presented, make sure you do the due diligence for accounting for outliers and seasonality and all the trends and baselines, right? Really understand the data and validate your understanding of the data with the domain experts, right? And iterate as often as necessary for the entire analytic life cycle, every stage of it, until you get to a place where both you are comfortable and the stakeholders believe it and are willing to take action based on that data. And the third most important thing we found over the years is we really need to help seed that data-driven DNA and inspire people, right? Both consult on, here are questions that you can actually answer with data, but also show them the path, right? Just don't leave them in the dark, right? And a lot of that is training and content around what data is available, what are simple techniques you can use, not overwhelm them with the math behind it, but here are simple how-tos and best practices of things you can do to get to that first level of insights from the data. Okay, on the process side, cross-functional collaboration is really key. Now, there are often a lot of barriers when it comes to crossing those siloed boundaries, but you got to start somewhere, and you have to really build those allies across different organizations who can help you get many lenses into the same problem, right? The side effect of that is if you have those multiple lenses accounted for, you really get higher value out of that same data, right? And at the same time, you need to, again, align up front, but also iteratively realign as different people's cost functions and motivations and metrics change for what their goals are within their silos, right? So build that support structure and build those allies within your organization and across those silos. The second thing, which was kind of, it's an afterthought for high-tech and other use cases of data, but it was actually a natural thing for finance, was really establish that governance and guardrails around the data and analytics, right? And that starts from data quality and fitness of purpose of, what am I collecting, why am I collecting it, sharing that knowledge, and establishing the technical infrastructure as well as the operational rhythm to really align and answer questions with data in a convergent fashion, right? So within a products organization, you may be looking at telemetry, operational data on, support tickets and, whether my infrastructure is up or down, JIRAs for code check-ins. In the field, we often look at leads, contacts, accounts, what is the likelihood of an upsell, right? Or what are the factors that drive that? And then in marketing, you want to look at, activity on the website, correlate, web logs with people who actually pull in, get converted into those pipelines. So it's almost, you can connect all these data sets in a way that you can get a better 360 view of what is going on in your business. But to do that, you need that governance and process structure so that you're not kind of stepping on each other's toes, or you actually can have those primary keys to join those data sets without having to duct tape it after the fact. Right? So on the technology side, this is where I guess I have more experience than I would have expected. So first and foremost, we kind of make assumptions on, okay, what you see is what you get with data. That's not necessarily true. You have to drive back to inform the technical side of the house if you're building a product, right? Ask them, can you add more instrumentation and improve the granularity of the instrumentation to help me solve these problems? And try to understand what that would take and account for that in the entire data lifecycle. So invest in direct instrumentation. Don't try to compute metrics after the fact. If you can measure it directly, that's preferred, right? When you're building interfaces for collecting data, really, again, put yourself in the other person's, the user's shoes, and try to figure out What are the guardrails? Like, what would be their assumptions about the questions being asked, and what are the guardrails, checks, and constraints I can put in to make sure I get the quality of data I want? At the same time, be thoughtful about, how you name your fields, and, document, build data dictionaries for all the data assets within your organization that you think other people might leverage. Versioning and lineage tracking is a huge challenge, especially when you cannot always, control who is using the data that's generated by your system. So be mindful of that and figure out, are there tools that I can buy or build and watermarks or whatnot that I can have to really kind of, build that awareness around where this data is coming from and what it really means, right? Build sandboxes, right? When you're doing analytics, right, you don't want the analysis results to prematurely land in the wrong hands. So think about curtains and figure out the watermarks and appropriate mechanisms to avoid unintentional visibility. Move towards self-service, right? This is something we keep hearing about, oh, let's democratize AI, democratize data, right? The reality of it is, that's really, we're miles away from that, or, thousands of miles away from that, right? So as data practitioners, there are a few things we can build that would kind of, take that first step along that 1,000-foot journey. First of all, help people connect multiple data sets within and across their tools, right? This might be a little bit of plumbing. This might be a little bit of like schema guidance around add this one field and make sure it lines up with this other field in this other data set, right? Create those views to unblock people. So instead of everyone trying to run queries that mash up the same 2 or 3 data sets, if you can unblock them and provide them a starting point, right? That canvas, so they just have to ask questions of the baseline view of data, that actually helps inspire them more and iterate quicker, right? Of course, when you build those views, you have to lock it down appropriately and make sure you're not enabling backdoors and side doors in the process. Iterate, and really, iterate for the now, but also with a vision towards the future. You really have to think about, do you want to be the bottleneck for people getting access to data? Do you want to be the bottleneck for generating reports, and how often are you willing to do that and update it for the consumers? Or do you really want them to just go at it, free form, complete self-service without being able to line it up with other analyses going on within the organization? So really it's, a lot of it has come to that philosophical realization that you don't have control over everything, but you have to figure out, how much you are willing to put in and how much automation you want and freedom you want to give people. So in conclusion, I think what I've learned over the years is you will wear many hats as a data practitioner. Sometimes you are a plumber, sometimes you're an engineer, sometimes you're a statistician, sometimes you're just, writing code or scripts for people. Sometimes you're just, a management consultant trying to say, hey, what are you trying to solve for? Let me help you on that path. So you're really kind of playing many roles as a leader, as an individual contributor, but most importantly, an influencer, right? So your greatest asset in all of this is your scientific objectivity and your neutrality, right? Don't jump to conclusions prematurely. Don't get swayed necessarily by the most immediate problem at hand. Of course, help unblock them, but you have to have that sense of, what is the bigger picture here? What is this future state that I want to drive towards and help people build towards? And, wear the different hats that you need to make that happen, right? And with that, I open up for questions. And I realize lunch is next, so I'll just hang out if that's needed.
Archana, That's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, if the pre-break questions were any guide, everyone's going to be silent and heading out there for lunch. But let's hope that's not the case. Questions? Thank you so much for some great lessons from experience there. Anyone want to kick us off with questions? We've got the same pattern. Isn't that interesting? Yes, sir. We'll take one at the back, and then we'll come down here. Thank you.
Hello. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. My question is, do you have any like real-life examples of the principles you just informed us about that you can share with us?
So a lot of the principles I shared are pretty much, what we try to put in place at Splunk for ourselves, right? So there's this concept of course, we're building a product for other people to leverage their own data, but we should, lead by example and put our money where our mouth is, right? So I think, honestly, it started out with, initially, you're just, build a product, get it out there. But then over time, start using your data so you can help your own business, right? And then that immediately opens up this whole challenge around siloed data, the legal concerns around how the data should be used, IT infrastructure gaps for auditing and guardrails around what people are doing with the data that's available, right? So I think it's really very much, you just have to iterate, start somewhere, start by trying to solve one problem, one question backed up by data. Go through that end-to-end process of trying to answer that question, and as a side effect, you will uncover all the existing holes that need either duct taping or longer-term investment in redoing the right way.
Great. Another question, gentleman in the white shirt.
Hi, sure. So thanks for a great presentation. Since you didn't pitch your product, is it okay if I give you an opportunity to pitch your product?
Sure.
So my experience with Splunk has been that it's typically been positioned as a repository for unstructured logs. And
right.
We're at a data science conference. I wanted to understand your strategy for enabling users to essentially run models that can generate better inferences from what has traditionally been a repository.
So I think there are a couple things, right? We started out as primarily targeted at unstructured or semi-structured data, which is typical of machine-generated logs, right? But the real aha for us was that the machine-generated logs can really give you a lot of business insight if you just join it with, and augment it with the right data sets. So an example of that would be, web access logs, which people use to figure out, okay, what servers are up or down, can also be used to figure out, where's our traffic coming from, right? But also collate that now with, okay, who are our customers from our CRM data store, right? Mash that up and see, okay, we see these customers engaging with the website, and now I can also track their usage of the product based on the telemetry, and there may be certain products they're using, certain features they're using. Now get the customer success folks to help enable their adoption further and say, hey, maybe they need help. Maybe I should go get PS, professional services, involved, right? So that was kind of our journey. So it really started with unstructured machine-generated data, and slowly it became the platform where you can mash up and provide that single pane of glass across a variety of data, right? And then training models and all of that is almost a side effect, because once you can build those cohesive views of data and pre-process it and wrangle it in a way that you can make decisions, then you can scale it up, throw machine learning at it, and unlock the potential even further.
Okay, great. Archana, thank you so much.
Thank you.